welcome to the Oxygenaddict Triathlon Podcast. We're brought to you every week by our sponsors, precisionfuelandhydration.com. I've been trying to bring interesting and exciting and different stories to the world of triathlon and endurance sports for the last 8 years now, and I'm really pleased to invite Dave onto the show today. Dave Clements is one of our Team OA athletes. Dave, you've got a pretty unique and interesting story that's ended up taking you to some very unique and interesting triathlon and ultra endurance events. So I'm really excited to have you on the show to tell your story today. Welcome aboard, my friend.
Okay, thanks there, Rob. Thanks for having me on the show.
So listen, let's start off today. It's interesting with a guy like you, whether we start at the end or whether we start at the beginning. But let's just give people a quick overview. That the events you've done this year have been Celtman, which is arguably the most difficult and certainly one of the most difficult and extreme iron distance triathlons in the world. And then let me get this right, a 6-day ultra marathon across the Namibian desert. Is that right? Was it 6 days?
It was 5 days, so it's 6 marathons over 5 days and a double on the last day, just for a good measure.
Well, I know I may as well do 2 to finish off. That's unbelievable. And we were talking a little bit before we came on air today, and obviously, you know, you and I have a similar backstory here. People assume when you get yourself fit and you do quite amazing ultra distance events that you've always been super fit, you've always been an athlete, you've always been into this stuff, and it's the natural culmination. But that isn't always the way. So you don't have a traditional job and you don't have a traditional story of coming into endurance events. So let's go back a little bit then. Tell us the story of your life then. How old are you at the moment?
I'm 53. I left school when I was 16. I joined the Navy. That was round about the time I started smoking and drinking a lot, and that carried on till I was 40. So eventually at 40, I stopped smoking, and I believe that was the start of me leading a healthier life, and various things fell into place after that.
So a lifelong smoker then, from joining the Navy at 16 through to 40 years old, and then a complete change.
Yeah, well, gradually I got off the drink. I mean, I was never a dependency or an alcoholic or anything. It was all purely sociable type
Party
antics.
drinking.
Yeah, exactly. I became a diver a commercial diver. I work in the North Sea, saturation diving. So it's deep work that we do. And I started that at 25. So I thought that was my chance to stop smoking and cut down on everything. But when I became a diver, I was surrounded by other divers who just did exactly the same as me. So then it was just a continuation from there of the same, you know.
What's saturation diving then? Talk us through a little bit what your job entails.
So what we do is we work on diving ships, and we live in hyperbaric chambers. There are a series of cylindrical type steel chambers, and we're locked inside these. When we start the job, we're pressurized to the seabed, the depth of the seabed. So we live on these. We're transferred to the seabed with a diving bell, and that's it. We're in there for the duration of the job, which could be up to 4 weeks.
Wow. So how big is this thing that you live in, and how many other people are in there with you?
Well, they're quite small, so there may be about 2 or so meters in diameter. Maybe a bit more. Bigger systems, bigger ships have got bigger systems, but some of them can be quite pokey. So you can be up to 5 of the guys, so 2 3-man teams living in one chamber. So you can't really go for a walk. You certainly can't run. You're kind of trapped in these things for the duration. You can do a bit of stretching and S&C, and obviously a bit of exercise when you go diving, but there's not a lot of scope for training in there. So my training comes to an end when I go to work.
I can't quite get my head around this. You're living with three other guys in a room
Yeah.
2 meters square for 4 weeks.
Well, five of the guys all together. So there's two. So we work in teams of three. On some vessels, you get 3-man chambers. On others, it's 6-man chambers. So yeah, you're living on top of each other. There's not a lot of space.
Wow. So I mean, this is embarrassing to admit right now and everything. I don't think I ever quite understood the difficulties that you were facing during this. Obviously, I knew
Yeah,
you were off. You said, "Oh, I'm away for 4 weeks. I'm
yeah.
offshore. All I can do is a bit of S&C." I hadn't quite taken in that you were literally living in a 2x2 space with 5 other guys.
Yeah, you're trapped in there. So every day you get a brief of the job in hand, and when your time comes, you lock off in a diving bell. You go through an airlock into a pressurized diving bell, and then that's it gets lowered down through a hole in the vessel to the seabed, and we dive for 6 hours at a time. You come back, you get your dinner, and all you feel like doing after that is lying down on your bed, going to sleep. And then it all starts again the next day. It's Groundhog Day
Wow.
for weeks on end. All you can do, you get a lot of time to think. So what I lose in like physical activities, I can actually, I can read down there, and I can get a few ideas together. A lot of my ideas and for ultra running, whatever, triathlon have been cooked up down there. Various points.
Yeah, I can imagine that your mind is trying to concentrate on where you would like to go
Yes.
when you get out of there.
All you do when you're in there is think about what you're going to do when you come out.
Okay.
That's it.
And what do you actually do when you're doing the diving? What's the job involve?
So it can be construction of oil fields, building oil fields, and the maintenance, repair of the infrastructure that's down there. What you see on the surface is what people refer to as an oil rig. It's an oil platform, but that's actually the control center for the region. So what you've got on the seabed is a network of manifolds, pipes, wells. The oil comes up out of the ground, up through the wells, up through the manifolds, into pipes and up to the platforms themselves, and then it gets piped off to wherever it's going. So it's quite a big operation. There's a
Yeah.
lot of safety involved, and you need to be focused.
And I don't know, man. I'm trying to consider. Well, firstly, I could not do this. I'm trying to put myself, as I often do doing interviews, I put myself in the mindset of the person I'm talking to. I'm getting the hairs on my neck are standing up just thinking about being trapped in a 2x2 space for four
Yeah,
weeks.
no, it's not an ideal sort of prelude to an ultra event or a triathlon. But I mean, for us, it's like it's a natural progression. We all started off diving inshore on building sites, and then progress to working offshore as an air diver, and then you do another course. You have to keep on throwing a lot of money at various courses. You do your saturation diving course eventually, and then you move on to that side of the of diving. It's difficult. The best jobs are hard to get, obviously, and depending on what the oil industry is doing, dictates how much work there is about. So I've been lucky enough. I look at it as being lucky. 7 years ago, there was a downturn in the industry, and I got made redundant. So I took 2 years off, and in those 2 years, I decided one thing I always fancied doing was getting fit. So that's what I did. I joined a running club, and I went on from there. So a couple of years down the line, a couple of years of running, I did cross country events. But then I got speaking to a chap in my in my running group who did triathlon, and asked him how do you do this? How do you get into triathlon? So he told me, well, the Edinburgh Half Ironman's on next year. Why don't you enter that? So that's how the triathlon got started, just through word of mouth and inspired by somebody else.
I see. And it was literally a kind of I've got this gap in my working schedule. I can do something completely different What do I want to do? I want to be outdoors for a while.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, so the the next 2 years for me was just a lot of trading, a lot of running, and seeing where I could take that.
Okay.
And then I went back to work again. Things picked up in the industry. I went back to work, but I went back to work with a different attitude. And I was pretty much only doing about 3 months a year. So that's when it started getting complicated again. Then I had to start sort of working around what I wanted to do. And as far as running and triathlon went, with my job, which is difficult.
Yeah. And is the work, does it kind of come and go in contracts and you get offered them at relatively short notice and you have to
Yes,
decide whether to take them or not? Yeah.
you have to play the game a bit. If you keep saying no, then you might get out of favour, or they just don't call you up anymore. So the summer, most of my work falls in the summer. So obviously, I want the work, and I just have to accept that sometimes I'll go into some events with only a few weeks training. Summer for me can be very frustrating as far as events go. I'm never up to speed. So have to wait till the work fizzles out in the autumn and get on the case in the winter, and that's what I've been doing. But COVID's kind of stopped me doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Because I know there's been a couple of events you've been entered into this year that you've had to pull the pin like at a
Yeah,
week's notice or 10 days notice sometimes, haven't you?
yeah. I mean, oh yeah, totally. I've missed out on two Ironman events. One was deferral. I seem to be chasing deferrals a lot from the COVID period. For 3 years now, I've been trying fairly desperately to do another Ironman branded event, and I had a bash at, had a go at that. There was Ironman Copenhagen in August. I got within 2 weeks of it, and I got a call for work. So I kind of saw. I thought, well, I'm going to make Portugal. If I'm going to miss out on that, I'll make Ironman Portugal in October. So that never happened. But with missing that, a job that I went on got extended, and so I missed that. But then that opened up the door for me for the ultra events I just did in Namibia. I knew I couldn't do all of them, but just the ones I've done, luckily, have been all the extreme ones, the Celtman and the Desert Ultra. So I'm quite happy with that, really. I can't complain. I have to take it on the chin a bit, losing my race fee and training for something that never happens. But, you know, 3 or 4 weeks down the line, when I come back again, I can kind of pick up on that. It's still there. I haven't completely lost that fitness, but I've just
Mm.
got to sort of build on it again. Yeah, so I'm getting used to the place.
Are you often surprised by how much fitness you've kept when you come back from doing jobs?
Definitely. I mean, that running in the desert in Namibia will bear testament to that. And the Celtman, yeah, I mean, I've been tweaking the nose of DNF these events, but I was nowhere near it, to be honest. I enjoyed them, and yeah, never once thought about giving up. I mean, they were punishing,
Yeah.
but I think maybe that suits me. Quite like that challenge.
I bet you do, yeah. Well, listen, let's go through the events, and I want to talk to you a bit about mindset later on. But let's start with Celtman. So, for people who don't know, Celtman's part of the Extreme Triathlon Series worldwide. Um, it's characterized by cold water, a long hilly bike course, and a long mountain ultra marathon at the end to finish, where only some people some of the time get to actually go over the mountain depending on the weather and depending on the time of day. So talk us through the whole Celtman experience, because it's one of those events where hardly anyone's done. It's a lottery to enter. So it's a great opportunity, I think, to talk about the event. I know listeners have been wanting to know about it for years, Dave.
Yeah. So I'll take you back to where it all started. I entered the ballot for a bit of a laugh. I thought, well, and to tempt fate, I know there's a lot of people who enter it. So I thought, well, it's never going to come in for me, but I'll enter it as well. And Bill entered it also. So An email come back a few weeks later saying, "Oh, nah, sorry, you've missed out." And then about a week later, somebody had dropped out and it said I was in. So I thought, oh, geez. So I've got to do this event called the Celtman. That'll be interesting. I mean, my first thoughts on the matter was, well, it's at the end of June. I'm going to be working. I'm going to miss it. It's probably not going to happen, but I'll just see how it goes. So fast forward to about, I went off on a job. I think it was the end of April. It only lasted for about 2 or 3 weeks anyway. So at the end of that, I realised that I had 5 weeks to train for this Celtman event. So I started panic searching for a support runner. So I realised it had become real then, and I was going to do this. So I had to look for a support team. So I had to get all that together. You need somebody driving a car around, and you need somebody to accompany through the mountain section of the run. So I managed to get all that together. There was a girl; she's a doctor. She's based in Skye, called Sarah Atwood, who was brilliant. So we got chatting for 3 or 4 weeks, and another friend did the driving. So we got all this together, and then and then made it to the events. 2 weeks before, I went and did a course recce. So I thought I got to prepare here as best as I can, because I don't really know much about the race, and I haven't done any extreme triathlons. So I took my touring bike and I spent 2 days going around the bike course. And halfway through, it is really hilly. I think there's about 2,300 meters of elevation, and most of it's right in the middle of the race. So went around the bike course, went up a mountain, and I swam in the sea lock, which was cold. I think around about 10 or 11 degrees when I went, full of jellyfish. But the weather was absolutely beautiful, like, amazing. The photographs I got are incredible. So 2 weeks later, turned up for the event, and I think it was the worst weather they'd ever had. So on the day of the event, it was 40 to 50 mile an hour winds across gales across the course. The temperature was around about 12 degrees. It was like an autumn day, I think in Edinburgh, where I live, I think it was like in the mid-20s, but they're freezing. So so that's what we had to deal with. So everybody knew that morning. I think, what time we were up, about 3 o'clock or something, to get your tracker and stuff like that. But yeah, it was hideous. Rob, you would have hated that.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't say I would have loved it. No chance. Those days are long gone for me.
I think you'd have to be crazy to love it, but I think there's people there who sort of enjoyed it being as extreme as it possibly could. At the end of the day, it was an extreme triathlon, like. So we went round in the bus on the day, round to it's a point-to-point swim. 3 points. It's not quite 3.8. I think it's 3.4K or 3.5. So we set off. So about the first kilometre was fairly flat. And then when you got out into the open water a bit, then it got rough. There was a lot of swell. I think there was about 180 people started as well. A couple of times I stopped and looked around me, and I couldn't see anybody, anything, any kayak or nothing. There was nothing to see. So you felt like you're well and truly on your own. So had about a kilometre and a half of swell and rough sea, and then you got into a shelter bit again, and that's where the jellyfish kicked in. So you were almost pulling yourself through these things. They were that thick. It was about, I don't know, two parts water to 1 part jellyfish.
Really?
So there's about a kilometre of that, hauling yourself through these. Luckily, there were just these, I think they're called half moon jellyfish or something. There wasn't so many lion's mane. They're the ones that leave a nasty sort of sting. And the fella who won the race, he got stung on his face. So he mentioned that in his race report. So managed to get through that. I don't know how many were behind me when I came out, but I'm having a guess. I was in the last sort of third of people coming out of the water, and I'd sort of planned on quick transitions to sort of, you know, speed up my time a bit through these things. I went into the race thinking about getting you get two different t-shirts. You get blue for making the high mountain cutoff, so there's a time cutoff on that, and then a white if you didn't make that cutoff. So I was going for this blue t-shirt. So I went through. I was the 14th fastest through T1 through the transition. So I got off to a good start, and then I had all sort of, because my hands were numb, my watch, my bike computer, it was like fumbling fingers all over the place, and wrong buttons were pressed. I think I lost my swim, so I was faffing around with that for about 5 minutes. But then I got off on the bike. So it's always good when you get out the swim and you get onto the bike. You feel like you've the most daunting part of the triathlon. So about halfway through the course, I mean, the weather was atrocious. There were sheltered bits where you could get a bit of speed up. But by the time I'd sort of hit all the hills, you know, I was starting to feel the effects of the course itself then. You know, it was very tiring, all these hills. And then just when you deserved a bit of downhill and a bit of speed, a bit of freewheeling, that's where you got this horrendous side wind. So you had to lean into it. I mean, the bike must have been about 60 degrees leaning into it. I was on the brakes, probably doing about, I don't know, 10 mile an hour or something. And this was on a downhill where you could be enjoying yourself. So that was a bit of a disappointment. And then there was one fast bit on the course. The race, the guy who won the race, I saw his race report, and he saw he was doing 105 kilometers an hour on this stretch of road, which was scary. He was an ex-pro cyclist. He said that, you know, it was scary, but you did have the wind behind you there. And then just so when you finished the end of that, you know, you felt a bit better because you'd had this, like, it was the only easy bit of the cycle, and then you took a right turn in the last 25 miles of the race. I mean, that stood out as the big sufferfest. So 25 miles of going into, I think it was 45 mile an hour headwind. I looked down at my bike computer at one point, and I was doing about 9 mile an hour, but pushing about 220 watts on the flat. So
unbelievable.
So I mean, there's no two ways about it. It was wind out if you really, you know. And my support runner said she was waiting for me at the end at T2, and everybody who came in on the bikes just had all the same look on their faces. They'd sort of been through it, you know. They'd been through the mangle, you know. I mean, I was just glad to get off the bike at that point, you know, in T2, and sort of all over the place a bit, sort of getting changed into my running gear, and headed off and tried to run, but you just didn't feel like running. It had taken that much out of you. And then the course quickly went on, the run course, the first half of the run course quickly went on to heather bush clad hill. So there was no distinctive sort of track to follow. It was just bits of orange ribbon that were tied onto the bushes that you had to follow. So it's not even like you could run through it, you know. So walked through it, seen a few of the people ahead of me, caught up with them. There was a lot of walking going on. A highlight of that run for me was in the middle of absolutely nowhere. I've got to take your hat off to the support crew that were there. There was one guy with a table with an umbrella, I mean, on the side of this windswept hill, with like the tastiest items you could ever imagine and fantasize about on the table for you to eat, all like cakes and sweets, you know, you name it. And there was 3 of us there, and we stopped for a chat for about 15 minutes with this guy. I mean, that's what the race did to you. It just, you know, it just got so tough that you sort of found a bit of humor in it all. But after I had that nibble, it gave me, I find this a lot when I eat. a big, a nice bit of energy. And I started running again after that, and I pretty much ran. I think the first section was about 20K, so I pretty much ran the last sort of section of that, and then that takes you into the cutoff for the high route, for the low or the high mountain route. So the route had already been cancelled. We'd found out due to the weather. It was minus 10 wind chill factor and 70-mile-an-hour winds. So that was the end. So nobody was doing the high course, They had closed it down 1 year before, but they were saying this was the worst weather they'd ever had overall. So my support runner picked me up. I probably spent about 20 minutes at this cutoff, at this checkpoint. A lot of people did. I went to the toilet. I just needed a pee, but I sat down in the toilet, and I don't know, 10 minutes just flew by. It was just great to get a seat. The actual Portaloo itself was rattling around a bit with the wind outside, but it was just like this amazing moment of peace. I saw on the Celtman Facebook page a few days later, somebody put a post in. Did anybody go in one of those Portaloo toilets at the mountain checkpoint, sit on it, and not want to come out again? I say, yeah,
the only shelter
exactly
on the whole mountain.
Yeah. Just had a moment, this brief moment where everything was nice, everything was all right. So obviously, I got myself together, went out, and then we hit the low-level mountain route. So it was like a howling gale in there, horizontal rain, mountain rescue support crew that were there. They were all like hunkered down in the bags and, in survival bags and wet weather gear. But they were still cheery. They kept us going. My support runner, Sarah, amazing. She got me running again. And we passed a lot of people, actually, probably passed about a dozen or more people. She really did a good job of getting me going. She was a real character. She's actually in her age group. She's 40. She's the European standard duathlon champion.
Okay.
So she was a decent runner and a doctor, and just fantastic. I couldn't have asked for a better support runner, really. And all this had happened in a short space of time. I got this together. So if anybody ever does it and you're panicking about finding a support runner, you can find them online nearer the time. I think I found Sarah on Scottish Hill Runners. There are people about who really want to sort of do this in a support capacity.
Think of nothing better than running a marathon in 70-mile-an-hour winds. That's the kind of people you need around you, isn't it?
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, just everybody, the support crew, everybody there was brilliant. It's like you go to these extreme events. The more extreme it is, the more interesting and outgoing and mad for it everybody is. It's a real good bunch of folk that I didn't think it existed, that I've sort of happened upon, just by having a laugh and entering Celtman Bellet.
Did you have any doubts at any point whether you were going to finish?
No, that was the thing. So I thought, so I had a little bit of time to think about this when I was offshore, and I did all the prep I could. I read the race manual twice. I've done this a lot over the 6 years I've been keeping fit and doing events. I just asked people who've done it, what did they do? What kit did they get? I've asked a lot of questions just about everything I've got, every bit of kit I've ever had. I've sourced it. I've asked people about what's the best thing to do here, and there's no shortage of people willing to help you. So the community itself has been sort of pivotal in me finishing everything. So never at one point, even during the race, did I think about I'm not gonna manage this.
Interesting.
Yeah. No, it is. It's a funny one, Rob. But that is what I'm finding a lot, discovering it in myself, and it's given me a lot of confidence to go on to do other things like the Desert Ultra in Namibia.
Hey, well,
So,
we can't go to that yet. Come on, hang on. We've not crossed the finish line of Celtman yet.
yeah, okay, yeah. So,
So what point
yeah,
were you at then when you realized you were going to finish, you were nearly done? Was it still daylight? Describe the scene to us.
yeah, it was still daylight. I mean, we kicked off at I think the race actually started about, I think it was like 6 a.m. So what was it? Middle of the summer. I took just over 15 hours. So it must have been around about sort of 9ish when I finished it. So it was
Okay.
still light. Um, and the last 5K, I was done with running. So we just casually walked in, and I don't think anybody passed us. We'd sort of done a good job of running past a lot of people on the mountain itself, but we were now onto the road, and we could see the finish line in the distance. So yeah, we just basically, I think we ran for a laugh, ran about the last 100 yards, and just for effect. But you got greeted. Obviously, you got a hearty greeting of everybody, and given the most rank tasting bottle of beer I've ever had in my life. Which was from some local brewery. Like, I'm more of a cider drinker. So yeah, but I drank it anyway out of good manners and that. Yeah, and that was the end of that, and it was just a case of cheering a few other people in. There's somebody I knew who was about an hour behind me who came in, so we were there to see her came in, and then yeah, was that enough for you, Rob?
That was it, huh? Did it
Yeah.
measure up to the experience you hoped you were going to have when you were obviously you're offshore, you're under the water, you're in your diving bell, fantasizing about the outside world. I guess it lived up to expectation, right?
Yeah, it was extreme. It did what it said it was going to do. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I did have that moment of thought. I think it was on the last hour or two on the run. I thought, I am never doing anything like this again. That is the end of my extreme, extreme event career over already. But like by the time I'd finished, I was like, yeah, there was something about that. It was no part of it. I did well in the swim. I think it was an hour and 13 minutes. I did, which was good, spot on for me.
Yeah.
Even with I think the water was 11 or 12 degrees, so it was cold and daunting. And there was a swell, there was wind, it was rough. So I'd say I did well with that. I had good transitions and good stops. I planned for 4 stops along the bike course, and everything went to plan. Everything went to plan. I did spend a lot of time going over this with my support crew and going over it with myself.
Mm.
So I don't think we made any mistakes. So
Well, having
that
the plan
was
is a
a
big
big
part of
part.
that, isn't it?
Yes.
Having
Yeah.
having having visualized the whole thing, read the race manual a couple of times, having a really clear plan for what you're going to do. It sounds like your mindset is very much one of you control what you can,
Yeah.
and you're an extreme example of like my advice was just let go of what you can't control.
Yeah.
And in terms of the last bit of your training not going right, I hope there's someone out here listening to this who's going, someone needs to hear this. The last bit of my training hasn't gone right. The last bit of Dave's training was 4 weeks under the ocean, living in a pressurized diving bell. So it's all relative, right?
Yeah. I did. My training was good. I mean, you gave me a good. Yeah, it's all relative for sure. You gave me a good training plan, and I believed in that, and did what you said. Did what I could do, and on the day, I did what I could do. I had a few other things I have to control as well. I've got arthritis in my hip joints. I didn't mention
Mm.
that. So I got diagnosed when I was 42. When I first started, I first tried to run. I was very tight around the hips, and I got an MRI scan. So I've been battling with that as well. A couple of years after I got diagnosed with that, I started something. I've mentioned this before, Bikram yoga. It's the
Yeah.
yoga with the dodgy guru, but it's changed my life. That not spiritually, but physically. I've been doing that for 9 years. So that started me effectively. That got me into running. 2 or 3 years after doing that, I felt a lot better, and so I still do that now. So that was a bit of a worry, if any, going into these extreme events. and marathons, Ironman, whatever, long distance running, does make me, I am concerned about that. But all I do just to counteract that concern is I go to this Bikram yoga every day. I just like completely like do it as much as I can. And I believe, along with a few other things that I've not really had any running injuries yet.
Yeah.
With managing my hips and my back, I mean that has been right up there. So
Interesting. Is
that's
Bikram
probably
yoga the
worthy of
one that you do in
mentioning.
a really hot room?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
26 postures, very repetitive, hard to get into, to get into the swing of it all. But really, like, it's been a game changer for me.
Yeah.
It really has. I mean, I didn't think when I started doing that Bikram yoga, I didn't think I wanted to do triathlon I mean, I was told not to run by consultants about my hips. He told me I'd need a hip replacement operation. This is when I was 42. Hip replacement operation, a double one before I was 45. So I've really kicked that into touch.
Yeah.
I've been back for a few sort of, I've been to see the chap a few times and he's amazed. He says he's never seen, there was no change in 6 years. There was no change in my condition from when I first saw him. So when I went back for another look at it. So that's been something I've had to manage as well.
Mm.
But it just shows injury, if you can find a way of alleviating any symptoms and that, you can go on to do whatever you want to do. And
Yeah.
I really believe that. I've surprised myself.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can still remember, mate, when you joined up with us, and I was reading your initial information, and that was the big challenge, wasn't it? It was I've
yeah,
got arthritis in my hips. I can't do more than 2 long runs back to back
yeah.
before we need it. Yeah, that, and you've managed it incredibly well.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like the more I do, the better it gets. And I also mentioned I think it was to Andy. Well, I spend about 3 months of the year sort of locked inside these tin cans as well. I mean, am I suitable for being coached? With all that was said. But it's been brilliant for me, Rob. It's I was overtraining before, so I was overdoing it, and I wasn't improving. But now I'm getting a proper, you know, schedule, doing the right amount of things. It's helped me so much.
Do you think that's the
Um,
difference it's made? Is the sort
yes,
of when you came out, it was. I mean, I'm starting to see a more of a glimpse into your mindset. You come out of being in a tin can for 4 weeks, and it's like,
yeah.
let me at it. I've got all the
Oh,
training. I'm
yeah,
gonna do all of it. I'm gonna do everything.
yeah. I
And
mean,
we've kind of been a bit
it's a
more like,
euphoric feeling.
oh, bet it is. Yeah.
Whatever you do when you get home, everybody comes out of there and they just want to get home and get on it.
Yeah.
Be it drinking, partying, your kids, whatever your thing is. You've been thinking about that for weeks on end. It's
Oh,
yeah,
good.
it's a crazy old job. Really.
Yeah. I'm glad it's helped you. I'm glad it's
Yeah.
because that's the thing we wanted was it for to bring a bit of balance to the time that you
Yeah.
had to train when you weren't under the water. So
Yeah.
it feels
Yeah.
like we're on the right
Yeah.
track, hopefully.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. Like, yes. I'll be here for as long as you kick me off out the group. It just it's just given me structure.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing before. I wanted to do all these things, but I didn't really know how to train them. And when I'm at home, I get a lot of time. I'm not like some people in the group who are struggling to fit things in. It's either I'm offshore and I can't do it, or when I'm at home, I've got a lot of time to do it.
Mm.
So there is that tendency when you've got all that time to do too much. I mean, I think some days I was doing like a mile and a half swim in the morning. I was doing a 90K cycle, and I was going to my running club in the evening, or it was too much. And I'll be doing that for days on end, and I wasn't getting anywhere. All I was doing was asking for injury, really. But yeah, it showed me the way.
Right, now I want to hear about Namibia. I want to hear
Oh yeah,
about
that's
because from my point of view, you're going to laugh at this, but I don't know how many years it's rolled over for. Is it 2 years it's rolled over because of COVID and things? It's been on the race schedule and like I've got a column for stuff for the future and it said 5 day and 6 day Namibia Ultra run. And I was just
yeah.
like, really? Is this
He's having
really?
a laugh, isn't he?
We're going to get there?
Well, it actually goes back further than that, Rob. 5 years ago, I've been running for a year. Hadn't heard about triathlon, and I was looking for a big challenge.
Yeah.
So I internet searched the world's toughest races, tempting fate as I do, and this jungle, Beyond the Ultimate Jungle Ultra, came up. So I thought, well, I'm just going to enter it. So the first 2 years, I managed to get it deferred. It was in June, so it was when I got back to work again. So I'd entered it on the 2 year break that I had off from diving. So by the time I went back to work, the date it was on in June was it's when a lot of my work is like. So I ended up sort of cancelling it twice or getting it deferred. They were good enough to let me keep my race fee. They were a brilliant bunch. And then we had the COVID. So there was another 2 times it was cancelled. The last year, so I swapped it. I swapped the jungle for the desert, believing that I could make it was a bit more doable doing this event in November rather than in the middle of the summer. So yeah, so I made it. So with 3 weeks of training time
Let's say
only to do
3 weeks of
it.
focus training. Let's say that because
Yeah,
somebody out there is going to be listening
yeah.
and go, "Oh, I'll have a go at this."
Yeah, it definitely needs more than 3 weeks. So,
Three
so what
weeks
I,
of 3 weeks of
yeah,
focus training when you're
yeah,
back on dry land.
yeah.
Okay.
So what I had to do is, so I knew I was going to miss my Ironman Portugal, and the door was going to open up for the Desert Ultra. So I got off the ship. I think it was round about I think it was like the third week in October. The job had dragged on about a couple of weeks anyway. But I just had to make my mind up. I thought, well, I've got 3 weeks to do this. I'll just do it. Else I'm just going to be deferring it again, and I'm sort of wondering whether they're going to give me my race £2,500 race fee back again, or defer it. I think I'm probably going to lose it. So I just made the choice then to do it, and I've thought about it a lot on the job. So I got in touch with your good self there, and you whipped me up an emergency training plan, which seems to have worked for me. I didn't have any time or chance to train with a backpack on, so I had all the gear. I had all my gear that I went to the race with was about four or more years old. Even the expedition food, the freeze dried meals, everything was like years old, but still tasted good. Well, sort of. So yeah, so 3 weeks passed. I had the feeling that I couldn't. I said to a mate of mine, I don't know if I can actually be bothered with this, but I've got to go now. I've bought a flight. I've said I'm going to go. I've got all the kit. I'll just go and just see what happens. I mean, even if I don't finish, even if I get to the start line, that's going to be better than just deferring it again and losing my race fee. So, I mean, I went into it with an open mind and that attitude. But I often, when I get home and I start training again, within about 2 weeks, I really start finding my feet again, and that's where my stored fitness from before I went away to work starts coming in. Start finding that again. I was just worried, like I hadn't ran with a backpack. I didn't really know what to do. One thing I did do, which was a good idea, I went down. I live across the road from a swimming bath. There's a steam room and sauna down there. So just about every day, I went in there and stayed in there for as long as I could. You know, baking hot. So I thought, well, the least I can do is show a bit of respect for the location and do a bit of a heat training, acclimatize a bit. And I listened to there was a podcast. I don't know how old it was, but it's maybe a year old. But I think it was repeated in the summer. It was about training in the heat or training for triathlon, an Ironman in a hot place. So I studied that a few times. I think things like that helped as well. And one thing I know that I'm good at, with the help of yourselves, is hydrating, fueling, that type of thing. Yeah, I think I'm quite good at that. I haven't had any issues with that type of thing, and I learnt my lesson the hard way. Before I started running, I did a Land's End to John O'Groats ride for charity, and on the first day, 30 miles up the road, I was off the bike, lying on the floor, and it was, like the low blood. I was bonking. It was a low blood sugar thing. And a mate who lived locally turned up with 2 Cornish pasties for me, and that got me that got me going again. But I remembered, so I can feel when it's starting to come on, long before it's coming on. Even if I forget to eat some, I get that sort of feeling. It's like an slightly empty feeling in your stomach, perhaps.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. So
had you had a chat with the guys, the precision hydration guys, before you went as well, to do with, because obviously, how hot is it in Namibia? Give us an idea of the scale of the challenge here. You're doing a marathon a day and then a double marathon to finish. And what's the heat of the day like?
So we had a few let-offs, really. I think the hottest day was 46 degrees, I heard. The hottest average, one of the days was 46 degrees, and it was hovering around the low 40s. The day of the double marathon was complete cloud cover everywhere, and I think it was down to the mid 30s or something, and that just made all the difference. And instead of completely getting completely baked, there was a little bit of respite there from the heat of the day.
Hot,
it was really hot. There was no doubt about it. It was roasting.
Did you feel the benefit from all of that work in the sauna and the heat room? That must have made a difference, mustn't it?
Yeah, totally. I think it did, and the Bikram yoga as well. And the guys, as you asked before, precision hydration, fuel and hydration. I'd had a call with them about 2 weeks before. So any big event I do to help me, I'll give them a phone and see what they think. I don't always totally stick to it, but I just find out what's good for me on the day. But I always, pretty much follow what they suggest. Things that worked really well for me, especially the new caffeine gels they've got. That gave
rocket fuel, aren't they?
Yeah, that did give me a boost, just when I need it, because you start flagging in the afternoons, the morning. So by the time you've done nearly a marathon, and you've still got about another 10K to go or something, or on the second day you've still got another marathon to go. Little things like that can help you really. And I drank all my water, electrolytes. I used the pH sachets in the morning, about an hour or two before the race kicked off, and I like those. Those always help. I took the chews, but they got really sticky. They melted. So
I bet they did. To get them at 45 degrees centigrade. Crikey.
It wasn't their fault, they were up against it.
I'm surprised your shoes hadn't melted in 45 degrees, Dave.
Well, I felt everything was melted, But yeah, I still got the chews down me, but it was quite hard getting them out the packet and that. But I mean, they tasted good and did the job, So yeah.
Do you have to carry all your own food for the whole event for this thing in the backpack?
Yes. So you've got to. So I packed just over 3,000 calories a day. The minimum requirement was 2,300. So you had to have 5 days worth of that, and a little bit extra for the last day. So every day your bag's getting lighter. So that one good thing about carrying the bag and eating is by the time you reach the last day, your bag is actually quite light. I started off with a 12 kilo bag, And you pretty much work out the first day the stuff you don't need. I'd managed to load myself up. There was a bit of panic buying going on in Windhoek, which is the capital in Namibia. We had 3 days in the hotel there before, just chilling out and having a few beers, so I did a bit of panic shopping there. And I managed to load myself down with 1/2 kilo of sweets and 1/2 kilo of peanuts and raisins. So they might be great for some people, but the last thing I wanted to eat on any day was peanuts and raisins. So I gave those away. And these sweets, some people say it's quite good to suck a sweet, but I just didn't find that myself, each to their own. So I managed to offload a whole kilo of stuff on the first day. There was a lot of swapping and giving stuff away, and I gave my salt tablets away. I wasn't using them either. So there was a good sort of really good bunch of folk up for trading a few items that they didn't need and stuff.
Did you have to carry your own meals as well for the end of the day? Was that the dehydrated
Everything.
meals?
Yeah, you got
Everything.
to carry everything. The only thing that they give you is a tent and the very thinnest of mats, like a yoga mat, to inflatable bed on and your sleeping bag and all that. So you had to supply all that, and it gets a little bit chilly at night as well. So you needed an extra set of clothes. So there was all that in there, and compulsory gear, medical kit.
Yeah.
So there was quite an extensive kit list, stuff you had to have with you that got checked the day before the race.
Okay. Wow. It's settling in this idea of not only do you have to carry your own food, but you've got to carry your sleeping bag, you've got to carry your clothes.
Yeah,
That's a big ask for 6 days, isn't it? Did you have a
yeah,
moment before you get started at all where you were thinking, what have I got myself into?
yeah. I mean, yeah, obviously, yeah. What I found I was doing, I think I had this feeling every day. I just thought, this is nuts. This is
Yeah.
bonkers. These folk are bonkers. Like this whole race is crazy. It's baking hot. I've got blisters every day, more blisters on my feet. I had that thought, but I didn't think it wasn't like worry or concern for finishing the race. It was just I don't know. It was like, yeah, bring it on. Uh, it sort of felt like it was that sort of mentality a bit. I mean, I thrived on it. I ended up doing okay, really, to be honest, Rob. I was quite surprised with how I was doing, even on the first day. I came in 7th on the first day. So there was 36 started, 10 DNF'd, 19 finished the long course, and then the remainder opted for the short course. So there was, and there were, everybody seemed quite experienced. A lot of people had done MDS there and
Okay.
other crazy events. Have you heard of the Montaigne Spine?
Oh yeah.
Have you heard of that? So this company, Beyond the Ultimate, they also run that race. So so quite a few people there had done that, and they were telling me about it. And I was like, what? Who the hell would want to do that?
Yeah.
It's in January.
We had a lad who was in the team who did it actually. I think he did it this year, Ollie. Yeah. Yeah. And
I mean,
it's grim, isn't it?
at least this was warm.
It wasn't
Where I
warm, it
was, I
was
mean,
baking hot,
bacon.
man.
There, it was bacon. That's true. But
What's
yeah, and
the
then this just
what's
sounds
what's the
brutal.
desert like in Namibia? What are you looking at? What's the
Right.
scenery like?
So it is very scenic. It's not just miles and miles of sand dunes. There's, I think at one time it was definitely volcanic at one time. I think I read somewhere it's the oldest desert in the world, or one of them is 55 million years old. It's been dry for 55 million years. So it's pretty, so there's a few sort of like tabletop mountain things you see, canyons, rivers, dried up riverbeds.
Okay.
Some of them that we ran through. The course itself, the surface, varied between really hard, sharp sort of stone, rock, hard, coarse grained sand. If you weren't on a track and you were just running across the scrubland, there was a lot of spiky plants you ran through. You were constantly trying to find harder, firmer surface as you could to run on, and I think that was the trick. There was a lot of soft sand about. There were trees. There was, I mean, quite scenic and beautiful in places. And if you got down to a dried up riverbed, a lot of trees and greenery around there. The crew said that was the greenest they'd seen it in 6 years around there. So I think it had a couple of good years of a couple of good wet seasons.
Okay.
In recent times, you know. So I mean, it was interesting. It wasn't just miles of like sand,
Yeah.
which I don't know. That wouldn't have been so much fun. It was a very varied terrain, very challenging, very sore on your feet. I've never had such sore feet running anywhere, and it almost seems more painful to walk than run. And if the more running you did, the quicker you got it done. That was the decision you had to make.
Yeah.
to make it all go away. I mean, there's no doubt about it. There's some, you know, it brought out a few emotions, especially on the last day. You know, it's obviously it's the toughest thing I've done. But yeah, you just have to keep going. You know.
What did you learn about yourself through doing it?
What did I learn about myself? It just reinforced the fact that I'm quite up for doing these extreme events. You know, I mean, I'll definitely do another. I'm quite good at managing bags, and I mean, I live out of bag half the time. Gear, equipment. Well, in my job helps me a lot with this, I think, and triathlon. You're always looking after your gear. You're always checking your gear, and you always know where it is or know where you can get it. So, I'm probably quite good at, as much as I like faffing around. Quite liked all the stuff with the bag and the gear, and such like.
Do you think, or more to the point, how much do you think the mindset you have to develop to do your job is a positive aspect for the
Definitely
like for these extreme ultra type events?
I think it helps me. I mean, I didn't know this years ago, but I think it really helps. We have to spend a lot of time waiting around, being patient, being focused, listening to instructions, making sure you don't make mistakes. I think my job, especially with triathlon as well, all the gear, checking all your gear, I think, and the endurance sort of factor of it, I think it really helps me in this. You know, it's like a surprising sort of takeaway from my job that it helps me with my hobby and the sports that I like. There's no doubt about it. It's come into play quite a lot, and I've thought about that a lot. You know, that's really benefited me. You know,
it's interesting that, isn't it, that you go to your jobs knowing that there's a much higher level of discomfort involved in your job than in most people's jobs.
Definitely,
you choose that, but it also helps prepare you for the discomfort of. I mean, we can't get around it. There is some discomfort involved in triathlon and endurance sport that we're also choosing. But I think a lot of people, they choose it. They want to do the event, and then race day comes, and it's like, oh, my legs hurt. I'm sore. I've got wet feet. It sounds like you just kind of embrace but this is how it is, and we're going to get through it because that's how your every day has to be.
That's it. I mean, when I'm at work, you can't say, "Oh, I don't feel like doing this," or "I can't do this." It's like there's got to be always looking for a solution. I mean, what is the alternative? Stop, give up. I don't want to do that, and I'll do everything I can. Unless, I mean, and then there was many times in this where I wanted to stop, but I get the same thing in a 5K park run as well. Every time I do a 5K park run, I feel like I want to give up after about the first lap or whatever. And I think that's just you. I think somebody told me once your body's telling your brain that it's in trouble and you need to stop. You know, things like that. But you just override it because you know it's because you're running. You know, and as long as you're fueling and doing everything right, why should you stop? Just keep going. I mean, you'll be angry with yourself if you stop.
Yeah.
If it's not for, obviously for injury or something like that. But that is, I think it's my mindset definitely gets you through these type of events. There's no doubt about it.
So where did you finish in the overall then, when all was said and done at the end of this? What placing did you get in this Namibia Ultra?
So I came 8th.
Wow.
I
Well
was
done.
seventh on the first day, 6th on the second, joint 6th on the third. The reason I was joint 6th is because a fella who I met who ran with a lot, a doctor from Gibraltar called Carl. We just couldn't get rid of each other, and we were trying. It was like, oh, geez, you again? Like, I can't. He was saying I was like a bad smell. But we ended up getting chatting, and we made a pact that day to stay together all day and finish together. So I mean, that was a brilliant day. The previous day to that, I'd spent 7 hours running on my own. So there was those sort of great sort of like friendship things that sort of cropped up out of nothing in all that desolate sort of desert and in the heat of the day and everything. It was a bit of fun, we had a good laugh. So I finished joint 6. That's why I finished joint 6. And then the following day was a half marathon. It wasn't exactly a rest day. The first 10K was up a hill, and then the second half was through some really horrible coarse grained sand sort of. I mean, it was the worst sort of surface I think that we dealt with up to that point. But I came 5th in that, and then 8th on the final day. So I was only 8 minutes off 7th place, and then there was a big gap between 7th and 6th, and myself and 9th. So I was quite close to anybody who was doing any dot watching. I know my dad was, and my dad said he thought I was going to catch the guy in front of me, but the last 5 miles, last 5K or whatever, was through a canyon, a dried up sort of canyon, and you couldn't really see who was behind you and who was ahead of you. But on the last day, apart from doing 2 marathons, I'd had a tough afternoon. I had a German and a Polish guy trying to run me down or walk me down even. I'd had to deal with them for 3 hours, and I kept on running off of them. They were these folk that run half a course and then walk the second half, but they can walk really quick. So my walk, if I ever walk, they just caught up with me. So I spent 3 hours batting these guys off, and we got into the end of the short course checkpoint, and they came in, and I was actually deciding then whether to do the long or short course, because your brain was telling you to, stop. This can all be over. You still get the medal. You can walk away from here with a medal, but you just do the short course, and obviously you'll drop down on the leaderboard. So I had something to eat. One of the other runners had DNF'd through an injury, and he'd left me food at you could do this. Left me food at this checkpoint, and I decided to go. And I think I walked the first 5K, and then these guys in the distance again behind me, and I thought, oh, there's no way I'm doing what I did this afternoon. That was 3 hours of torture, really, like just running away from them. So they walked past me, and I thought that was it. I was just going to let them go, because you don't feel like running. And I thought, well, that's going to be the end of my day then. These 2 guys are going to walk past me. It won't change anything to the standings because they're a few hours behind me time-wise. But I thought it's just going to be a boring 3 hours of me, just walking or doing whatever. So I thought I'd take the race to them a bit, and I ran for the next 5K past them. And then I stopped again, looked behind me, and they were behind me yet again in the distance. So I thought, no, sod it. I'm just gonna walk. I'm just gonna walk as fast as I can, and ended up finishing before them in 8th place on the day. So I spoke to them after. Obviously, you get to know everybody there. So yeah, it was a good race for them as well. Them trying to catch me, and obviously there were. If anybody was dot watching, it was probably the slowest race ever to watch. But riveting all the same, perhaps, for the avid follower of these things.
Well, listen, I guess my last question to you has got to be, what's next? So for some
Oh,
people, this is like the culmination and the done. For you,
yeah,
it feels like you've just opened this door into a whole new
yeah.
world of. There's even crazier stuff, and I'm even more suited to it.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, very, very good of you to ask me there, Rob. I've got a few things in the pipeline. Obviously, doing the Celtman just by sort of chance really um, has allowed me to find these things. I mean, I had this desert thing also in the pipeline, but I think that just gave me a lot of confidence for that. So that's made me. So my summers I mentioned earlier are just a bit of a damp squib really with events, and a bit frustrating because I know I'm off the pace and all that, and anything I do is a bit slower than I'd like it to be. So now, I've come to the conclusion that to avoid disappointment in the summer months where I work, if I want to do an event, just do a really extreme one that I don't have to worry about time. As long as I feel okay, confident going into it, just finish, just a completion thing. Like, and I've heard people going on about that, doing races just to complete them rather than to compete. Winter is a better time for me to knuckle down and train for something and hopefully be good at it. So first up for me, as you know, is Ironman New Zealand in, I think it's 4th of March. So I'm looking for a training plan from me soon for that. I need to recover from this a bit more first. But that's next up. And something I heard about, which I want to do in June, I've got the bike, I've got the gear, I've even tested it all out, is have you heard of the Tour Divide?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Do that. I want
tell
to do
everyone
that.
listening what that is.
So the Tour Divide is it follows the longest broken bike route in the world, which is 2,700 miles long, and it stretches from hotel car park in Banff to the Mexican border, and it follows the Rocky Mountains, basically the Great Divide. So it's a self-supported bike packing race. 200 or so bikes, competitors involved. There's no race fees, no prizes, but it's all run, timed, and you carry a spot tracker so people can follow your progress. 13 days is the world record. Guy Martin did it in 2016 in 18 days. But 25 days is seen as being respectable. So if I do it, if I don't do it next year, I'm going to do it the year after. But if I do it next year, I'm going to go into that looking at about doing it in 25 days, I reckon.
Nice. Oh, fantastic.
uh, we'll see how that goes. I'll let you know.
Fantastic.
Uh, and then I'm definitely going to sign up for. I'm going to sign up for one of these other Beyond the Ultimate Ultra events. I don't know if people have heard of them, but they are brilliant. They did everything they could to get everybody through the race best as they could. There's medics there, whatever. They'll patch you up. They're just fantastic bunch of people. And everybody I met at the race as well was excellent. They run about 7 of these races a year, and a lot of them are in restricted locations where you can't usually sort of get to,
Okay.
unless you do these, unless you're prepared to run for 5 or 6 days and cover 250 kilometers. You get to see these areas. So I'm definitely going to sign up for another one with Beyond the Ultimate. They've really make for a good experience, I'll say.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So listen, to wrap this up, I think there's going to be people listening to this who are inspired by your story. I know there's lots of our people listening who they've maybe done a few years of triathlon and Ironman, and they're ready to either move on to the next thing or they're looking for another challenge. Have you got a piece of advice you can give to them about what to do, how to go about it, how to pick an event? What would you say to people who are looking for that next challenge, who maybe feel a bit stale with triathlon and iron distance?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm here for the coaching group because I want to do triathlon. I mean, that is my hobby, and I love that, and I want to want to do that. But yeah, it's nice to take a sidestep if you've got that opportunity or you want to do that. But I'd just say, I don't know, start searching the internet,
Yes.
speaking to people, asking around, asking myself. I'm fairly sort of elbows deep in all of this now. I've got a lot of ideas on what I want to do. It's just finding out what's going on. I mean, even after going to Namibia, there's all these races I'd never heard of. Some of them are sound shockingly brutal. But at the end of the day, if you just go into them with the mindset, just complete, enjoy, I mean, this is, we might be doing this for enjoyment as well. Just be brave. Take a calculated gamble and get stuck in. That's certainly what I've done. If something doesn't go my way or something quite go to plan, I try and get something out of that, and that might open a door somewhere else with something. And I think that's pretty much what's happened here.
Yeah.
And to enter an event for a laugh, like I did with the Celtman, and then you get what you wish for. Yeah.
Brilliant. I like that. That's the quote right there. Be brave. Pick something that
Have
inspires
a
you.
go.
Be brave and enter it. Yeah.
I mean, because it's easy to think, it's easy to say, oh, there's no way I can do that. I mean, the amount of people since they come back have said, oh, Jesus, that's nuts. What are you thinking of? That's bonkers. Why would you want to do that? Why did you do that? Well, with this chat here, you can see why I did it. It's because I want to do it.
Yeah. I love it.
I think at the end of the day, have a bit of
Oh,
fun.
brilliant.
It killed me a few times, but feel great at the end, and it's it's not all about just for me. I like to other people are interested in what you're doing as well. I think quite like it, quite like what you're doing, and it's something interesting for them to see how you got on, if you finished, if you survived it, how well you did. Yeah.
It's inspiring for other people. It's been inspiring in the group. You can see the effect it's had just reading your race report over the last few days. And I know there's more than a few people talking in the background about going to do something that is just pushing their boundaries just a little bit more than maybe they would have done otherwise. And that's what I really love about this community. You do something that pushes yourself and it inspires somebody else to push themselves as well, just a little bit more.
I've always said that. I've said that a few times this year. I don't know if I heard the saying or I've just made it up myself, but I have always been inspired by others. It's other people I've spoken to. I've seen what they're doing. I mean, that has brought these things to my attention.
Yeah.
And I'm at that time in my life. I've not wasted a lot of time drinking and doing nothing. I mean, my kids are nearly 20. We brought them up as well. But it's just come at the right time of my life as well. So I think if you've got that opportunity and you've got that time and you've got the chance to do it, do it.
Brilliant. All right, Dave. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time today. I've loved hearing your stories. It's been really inspirational. And I look forward to Ironman New Zealand and to the Tour Divide in the future as well.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me on the show, Rob. It's been fantastic. I mean, it has been an honor where so many other stars of the sport and stars of the group have been on before me. So thanks for having me on. I was a bit nervous to come on, as you know, but I hope it all sounds okay.
Oh, you've been brilliant. You've been brilliant. Thanks, mate. Thank you very much.